Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Kim. Hi, Julie. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Nancy in Michigan. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Pat. So super great to have you all join today. As always, I'm really excited to dive into this material. I have my lovely assistant Sean here, and he was reminding me before we started about just the power of this content. He always reminds me of these things, and I'm really grateful. So we're going to talk about initiation today. You've all been initiated at some point in your life, maybe recently. I think we keep getting initiated. It's not a one-time process. So we're going to talk about what initiations mean, why they happen, why we resist them, because again, we all resist initiation, how we can move through it, and maybe some tools that help, because initiations are, I would say, not easy, right? They're a challenge for us to move into a higher level of consciousness or awareness or a different perspective on our life. And we all get stuck. So let's give it a couple more minutes to let some people jump on. Let me know where you're all from. And by the way, you can chat in the box. I read all the chats afterwards. I have to not read them during, or I get too unfocused. But I will say too, if you have, hi Emily, thanks for chatting. If you have questions, there's also a Q&A box. And that's an ideal place for you to put questions, because my assistants are watching and maybe putting questions that show up in the chat box in the Q&A box. And I'll make sure to spend time definitely at the end making sure we get all of those questions answered before we're done today. So let me share my screen. And we are going to jump in because there's a lot to cover when we talk about initiation and courage. Oh my goodness, is there a lot to cover? All right, so I want to start. I know many of you know who I am. You've worked with me, you've been in yoga class with me, maybe you've done a training or a program with me. But there might be some of you who this is brand new. So I've been in clinical practice as a licensed psychologist almost 18 years, which seems impossible to me. Have owned a yoga studio for almost 15 years. Also teach meditation. I have 3 kids, 10, 13, and 16, 2 boys and a girl. And really, I have over the years become quite clear that my mission or my dharma or what really invigorates me is the integration of my 2 disciplines, my 2 loves. I mean, I have many loves, but my professional loves of psychology and yoga. I found I finished graduate school with a PhD and pretty quickly got a little bit disillusioned with psychology in and of itself, because I realized I knew how to work with people from the neck up, and I knew that the body held so much content and healing. And so then I did a deep dive into the world of yoga, and now my mission really is the integration of these 2 disciplines. And it is forever exciting and awe-inspiring to me when you bring these 2 disciplines together. So I have lots of things going on in ways that you can join. We do a Wisdom Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month, different content from month to month. We always do a free Saturday morning yoga class. I've got a podcast. I've got this upcoming program that starts on Monday called Reclaim. We're going to talk a little bit about it at the end. I have a Yoga for the Mind certification, which is the integration, really my love, of psychology and yoga for therapists and or yoga teachers, or really serious students who want more of a deep dive into this integration. And then I'm going on several retreats this year. Guatemala in January, Costa Rica in May, and Ireland in September. So if you want to get away and do sort of a deep healing dive with me for a week in a really beautiful space, you can head to my website and there's more information there. All right, so this is what we're doing today. We're going to talk about initiation, how, why, and when we get initiated. As a hypnotherapist and someone who's practiced hypnosis for close to 20 years, I want to talk about the mass hypnosis I see in our culture and why so many of us resist our initiations. We're going to talk about why heeding the call to an initiation is so necessary on so many levels, and why we need courage, and what the heroine's journey looks like, which is different than the hero's journey. They're both powerful, amazing, life-altering, individuating experiences, but I do see the heroine's journey is something slightly different, which is very exciting to me. And I've been on my own massive heroine's journey quest in the last several years, which is definitely informing my teaching and really my whole perspective on life and healing. So we're going to get into that a little more. So I want to start today with like the big bang here. We're going to dive right in to these 4 soul questions. And these 4 soul questions were taught to me by my meditation teacher, Dr. Deepak Chopra. I went and studied with him at the Chopra Center multiple times and certified in his style of meditation called primordial sound meditation. And in this style of meditation, we start every seated meditation with these 4 questions. And these questions, I would say, are the big ones. Like these are the questions that count in life. They sort of cover the whole gamut of where we struggle, where we get stuck. And I think if we really look at every initiation that comes our way in life, it revolves somewhat around one of these questions, or maybe all of the questions. So I actually pose these questions to myself every morning when I get up to meditate. So in this style of meditation, close your eyes, go inward, and you start with asking these questions. Now, when I first started, I often didn't hear anything, or I would hear pat answers, like I would hear the same answer every single time. What I found via working with these questions on a regular basis for close to 10 years now, is that sometimes the answers surprise me. Sometimes the answers are what I expect. Sometimes there's no answer, there's just quiet. But there's something about continually coming back to these questions that's very illuminating. So we're going to do a very, very brief centering, just a couple minutes. And clearly if you're at an office or you're driving, you don't have to close the eyes and take part in this, but I encourage you to just follow the sound of my voice. Just allow yourself to settle in, and I will pose these questions. And as the question comes, even though you see them on the screen right now, you know what they're going to be. My encouragement to you is just to stay receptive, stay open. Again, your answer, there may be no answer. The answer may not surprise you, but there's always the possibility that something could come through that might be new for you, might be something you need to know today in this moment. So let's settle into our seat, and I encourage you to find a nice tall spine. So allow the weight of the body to settle over your sit bones, which are at the base of the pelvis. Feel your feet on the ground or where your feet are resting. And I invite you to take in a deeper breath in. In fact, as you inhale, feel your abdomen expand. And as you exhale, allow that exhale to help draw your attention inward and down. And then do that again. Nice deep breath in. As you exhale, your awareness draws inward and down. Starting to feel the shoulders drop and the muscles of the body begin to relax and soften. And in a very short span of time, just as we draw our attention away from the external world and we bring our awareness in and down, it's possible for us to become more open, become more receptive, become more connected to what I call our inner wisdom, our inner knowing, our truth. So in a moment, as I pose these soul questions in sequential order, I encourage you to not expect necessarily anything, but to remain really open to everything. Answers can come as body sensation, image, color, feeling. Just seeing and staying open to what might move through you today. So taking another breath in, as you follow that exhale, you become even more relaxed, more settled, more curious, as we work with this first soul question of, who am I? So just allowing yourself to settle into this question, who am I? We move into the second question. What do I want? What do I want? Staying open to sensations, images, feelings, experiences. Question 3. What is my purpose? Why am I here on this earth? What is my purpose? And softening into the question, into the space. What is my purpose? And then the final soul question, what am I grateful for? What in my life, in this moment, do I feel gratitude for? And then bringing the hands together in front of the heart, just allow the palms of the hands to start to rub together. So create a little bit of heat, friction, energy between the hands, sort of reawakening your senses. And then place the hands directly over the eyes, and keeping the hands over the eyes, allow your eyes to blink open as you adjust to the light, and then release the hands down. All right, welcome to those of you who joined. Just a very brief settling and centering into these powerful questions, really the 4 big questions of life, of our soul. Again, I don't know what your experience was. You can certainly put it in the chat box if you'd like. Maybe you got some clarity. Maybe it was just silent. Maybe the mind was spinning the whole time. Again, there's no right or wrong experience. It's just your experience. But these 4 soul questions really do, again, guide us throughout the course of our lives, and really are often, the answers are clues to how we're being initiated, is I guess how I'd like to say it. So what is an initiation? Well, I've talked about it in lots of different ways. In fact, a couple months ago, I did a whole Wisdom Wednesday, a whole talk on the dark night of the soul. I think Sean is going to maybe get it into the chat box if that's something you're interested in. So we can call it the dark night. We can call it an awakening. We can call it an enlightenment experience. An initiation is the word that I'm using today. But here's a whole list of things that people show up in my office, my psychology practice, with challenge. So I've sat through all of these with people, and many of these things on this list I've gone through myself, right? So things happen in the course of a lifetime, and they have this opportunity to take us somewhere else. And in fact, I think that this is really what an initiation is. It's a call from the soul, it's a call from our higher self saying that our old way of being no longer fits. Right? So the old way we've been moving through life, it's like we've outgrown it. It served its usefulness, but it's no longer going to take us to our next evolution. And so these initiation points come in. And clearly, some initiation points are like a swift kick in the ass, right? Like it's hard. You wouldn't wish it on anyone. Where other initiations can feel a little bit more subtle, a little bit more mild. I know I myself have felt this and worked with a lot of people who come in and say, I don't feel like myself. Like I'm exhausted all the time. I feel like I'm missing out on something, but I don't have any idea what it is. And so initiations can there's a whole realm, right? They can be really hard and harsh and fast, or they can be more subtle, more slow, more gradual. I think that there are several times when these dark nights, these initiations show up. I think adolescence is a key time when there is a stirring up of identity and a need to shift from childhood into more of an adulthood. I have a 16-year-old, so I know exactly, or I'm observing him going through aspects of this. There's this idea in our late 20s. If you know anything about astrology, it's called the Saturn return. I think it starts at age 28. I'm not an expert in this, but it seems this is also a big turning point for a lot of people when they often face crises of consciousness. They have this opportunity to shift in a new direction. Definitely midlife, which is right. I'm smack dab in the middle of that one. And I talked a little bit about the midlife crisis in the last Wisdom Wednesday that I did. And then I also see a lot of transition points into retirement, that phase when you're exiting a career and you're figuring out what comes next. In fact, I talked to a woman this last week who's actually going to do my upcoming program, and she said it so beautifully. She said, I feel like I'm in the last quarter of my life and I don't want to waste it. I want to make sure that I'm as conscious and aware and awake and really following the best path for myself as I move through what she is calling, my last quarter of life. So these are sort of the times, and again, it doesn't mean these are the only times we get initiated, but I do, just in my clinical experience, see that there are some moments in people's lives where it seems like there's more initiation or more stirring up that often happens. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the dark night. It's actually a really powerful topic, and I'd encourage you to, if you're curious about it, to watch that other talk that I gave on it. But the three markers of it that I think bear repeating right now is that when we get initiated, when we have something really challenging stir us up that's calling us to make some shift or change in our life, it often feels very mysterious, confusing, and uncontrollable, right? Why is this happening to me? I never saw this coming. I don't know what way is up and what way is down anymore. I don't even know what I want anymore. I feel so much doubt, right? These are markers of this transition that we go through. The dark night, the initiation, it's not a 24-hour turnaround, right? I mean, for me, I feel like I've kind of been in a 7-year cycle of working with a major initiation in my life. And so just know that it can feel mysterious and confusing and uncontrollable, and that's okay. That's sort of the mark of it. That's what allows our ego to soften enough so that we do make a shift. And often the shift that comes, we would never have predicted it. We wouldn't have seen it coming. And that's part of the beauty of the confusion and the mystery, is that our soul is taking us where we need to go versus our ego saying, I know the exact perfect plan, and this XYZ, this is what we're going to do. These initiations are a call from somewhere underneath our conscious mind. It's the unconscious. It's the soul saying, knock, knock, Betsy. There's something else that you're being called to do. We're going to guide you there, but it's going to be confusing along the way so that you don't get in there and try to control all of it and make it all pretty and nice the way you'd like it to be. So in these initiations, I really believe there is an opportunity to make what some theorists have called a vertical leap. And this is the work Ken Wilber writes a lot about vertical development. Gary Zukav has written about in his well-known book, The Seat of the Soul. He talks about these vertical leaps. So it's this idea when we have some kind of initiation in our life that it is a chance for us to sort of like amp up or move up in terms of our consciousness, right? It's an awakening that allows us to start to lift our consciousness and see our life from a new perspective. So this vertical leap can be really powerful, right? It can be a chance to wake up, a chance to reclaim more of ourself. But what often happens, and this has happened to me, this has happened to people in my life, is that instead of taking the vertical leap of consciousness, instead we take horizontal movement. And the horizontal path, and I'll give an example here in a moment, it satisfies our ego and our personality, but it doesn't actually lead to the growth that we need. So an example that I'd actually like to share about this is in the midst of the pandemic, which was a really hard, I know it was hard almost universally for everyone. There were a lot of really hard things that arose in my life during the pandemic. And in the midst of the pandemic, my husband was considering a job change. He was considering a move across to the country, to the west of the country, to the mountains, to this most beautiful, gorgeous place. And so I remember we went and visited, and we're wearing masks and we're trying to like get to know if this is a community where we would want to move. And I just had this like deep sense in my heart and in my body that despite the beauty of this place and despite actually how I loved the terrain and I loved the opportunity to ski and be outdoors, something didn't feel right about this move. Like it felt like it was coming from the wrong place. And I see now in retrospect that this was like a horizontal shift, right? Like it was leaving a life that didn't feel quite right, but just taking it and putting it in a new location, right? Versus really diving in and understanding the discord and the challenge and addressing that. So there was the opportunity for a vertical leap rather than just making a horizontal shift. Another example I might give is that I've seen a lot of people in my practice that get out of a relationship or get out of a marriage and right away jump into another one. And almost universally, I won't say it happens all the time, but often that next relationship doesn't work because it's a horizontal shift. Like they haven't actually dug into why the first relationship didn't work. They just moved on to the next person, but there was no shift in conscious awareness, right? So again, initiations are such a beautiful opportunity for us to grow, to move our consciousness up a notch and to see our life. Our life can stay completely the same. Nothing has to shift. The relationship, the job, the locale, but we shift, like we grow in our consciousness. And so then everything looks different. So again, I think there's an opportunity, but we often don't take it. So why don't we take it? Well, I do believe that we're in somewhat, or we can get sucked into what I sometimes call a mass hypnosis. And I'm a hypnotherapist, right? I've practiced hypnosis with people for 20 years and I love the tool of hypnosis. That's a whole nother conversation and talk, but it's a beautiful, beautiful healing modality. But I think that our culture, if we get really pulled into the zeitgeist of our culture is not a healthy culture. We don't live in a world where there's a lot of balance, right? So part of why we sometimes resist this initiation from our soul is we're caught up in the mass hypnosis of our culture. There's a beautiful quote by Krishnamurti, which I love. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, right? And there's a new book that just came out. I just ordered it by Gabor Mate, this amazing psychiatrist, physician, who's writing just about this topic of what it means to try to stay well and to be conscious in a culture that is not well, right? I would say that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of consciousness, right, to try to stay healthy. And I guess I want to come out because I'm curious from all of you. I'd like to actually have a conversation and look at the chat box here. What aspects of the culture that we live in feel toxic to you? And one of the things that feels really toxic to me is that we have split the mind from the body. So when we have a physical health condition, we are given often a medication where our humanity isn't taken into consideration. Our traumas, our lifestyle, our psychology, our emotions, our sensitivity, right? And so to me, that feels like a really toxic way to deal with health and well-being. Yeah, Doug, the political split feels super toxic. Yes, my worth tied to productivity, social media. Yeah, Pam also says we're measured by our productivity. Yeah, what happened in our culture that power, money, and fame has become so much more important than connection and collaboration and connectivity? Yeah, Teresa says it's working too hard. Exactly. I did a comparison to others. I did a little bit of research, and of course we know this, but the average American works more than 50 hours a week. This is in comparison to so many other countries that this is not even in their mindset, right? Why would you work that hard, you know? And yet we're sort of dangled this carrot in our culture, American culture, that if you work more, you put in a ton of effort, then you have this opportunity to make a lot of money and buy whatever you want. And yet the research supports that money does not equal happiness in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, Chris also says rampant selfishness in regard to others' feelings. The make myself happy. I take care of myself, but don't think about anyone else around me and how my actions are impacting them. Money over ethics. Yeah, so see, we all feel it. We all feel the toxicness of the culture. I'll share this because it hit me very hard. I was out hiking this past weekend. I was actually hiking alone. And there was like a big sort of fighter jet or something like circling over where I was hiking. And I think it's because it was getting ready to fly over the football stadium. There was a big game going on. And I couldn't believe how I felt so much grief. Like I felt grief about this plane circling and the sound and I mean, I know it was my challenge, but I felt like, oh, you know, why do we put money into these things, right? So yeah, mindless consumerism. Thank you, Angela Stewart, for that. Yeah, so there's so many toxic pieces. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not to depress all of us, because this is as easy a cycle we can get into of the world is falling apart. What do I do as an individual? My point in bringing up our toxic culture is that, again, it takes a lot of consciousness and a lot of energy to not get pulled into it. And I really believe we need others, right? We need conscious community. I need people in my life who remind me of truth, who mirror back to me compassion and kindness. I need people who don't want to go through life numbed out, drinking and smoking and not feeling their feelings, right? So we need conscious community. We need other people to help us. And we need to acknowledge that our soul is going to initiate us. Our soul is going to call to us. Our soul is going to say, Betsy, there's something better for you. But if I'm in that mass hypnosis, numbed out, not feeling things, stuck in consumerism, stuck in numbing out, I can't heed the call. I can't even probably hear the call, right? So we need to just be aware that if we align with culture, we're aligning with something that might be sick and out of balance. And yeah, it takes effort, but I believe it's well worth it. So let's go back to why we resist. So we get these initiation points, and then we resist. Why do we do this? Why do we resist the call? So I talked about this in the last webinar I did, that there's sort of, in my mind, there's probably more, but these are the two big ones for me. Things that hold us back from making shifts to higher levels of consciousness. And the first one is just, let's start with lethargy. It's that sense of like, I'm too tired, I don't have the energy, it's too hard, but I'm really comfortable on my couch. It would take a lot of effort to make that happen. Well, I want to share just a little quick bit of neuroscience that I think helps us understand why sometimes we get lethargic. And that's neuroscience shows us that whenever we face uncertainty, so whenever we're on the brink of some major change, it sort of fires in our brain or registers in our brain like it's a mistake, like it's an error. So anytime we're ready to make a shift, take a change, do something different, our brain goes dun 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 dun, dun, error, error, mistake, mistake. And none of us like to make mistakes. And so what often happens then is we pull back. I mean, I can't tell you many times I feel like I've been on the precipice of making some major shift in my life, and I go into massive doubt and fear, right? Like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, when I learned this piece of neuroscience, which I love really reading the research because it can be really practical. And this one's a practical one, right? That when you're ready to make a change, it might be the most beautiful, positive change in your life. Your brain is still going to try to convince you that it's an error. Right? So we have to understand this. And if we understand this, oh, there's the doubt coming in because I'm on the cusp of making the change, then it helps us to feel it and do it anyway. So the same thing happens with fear, right? We are gonna be scared, right? Anytime the initiation comes and we're asked to go in or we're asked to make a shift or we're asked to follow our soul, there's gonna be a fear. So the point of this conversation today is you're going to feel fear and you're going to feel lethargy or resistance. You got to do it anyway, right? Those things are going to show up. Where else? They're there. Where are they going to go, right? They're there. So can we feel it and can we move forward despite the fear and the doubt or the resistance and go for it anyway? So what are some of the things, again, I'm going to kind of escape here and talk to you. What are some of the things holding you back? I mean, for years, what held me back, I think we all play small, right? Some of the things that held me back for years is fear of what people would think. It's like I knew I had something that I wanted to do and share, but like, what are people going to think? And like, who are the people, right? Like we say that to ourselves all the time. Well, I don't want this to look bad, or I don't want that. Who are the people that we're so worried about, that we hold back from really doing what we're being called to do because of fear of letting someone down or what people are going to say about it? This is there's this beautiful book. In fact, I'm going to pull it up. It's right up here. The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. The first regret of people on their deathbed is, I wish that I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me, right? So this author worked with people on their deathbeds. And the number one regret is, I cared too much what people thought. And so I lived a life that they wanted instead of the life that I wanted, right? So what are some of the things that, what are the ways you've held back? Fear of failure, financial stability, fear of succeeding. So isn't this interesting? We hold back because we fear that we're going to fail, and we fear that we're going to be successful, right? And then what, right? Yeah, Allison says lack of a paycheck, this fear of there won't be enough, right? I can't tell you how many people I've seen in my practice that say, I want to leave the job at the university or the job at the big company, but the benefits are so good. Like, for how many times I've heard people say, I'm staying for the benefits. Like, I hate going to work every single day, but I'm staying for the benefits, right? We get pulled into, getting stuck because of these stories that we've really worked into our psyche, All right, so there's going to be fear. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be lethargy. And courage says we have to do it anyway. So let's get into courage. I love this, one of my favorite poets, Sufi poet Renee or Maria Rilke. The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. So just sit with that for a moment. The purpose of our life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. I know how I've lived much of my life is I felt like the purpose of life was to get better and better at things, right? To become more of an expert, to become more perfect at these things. But when we only do the things that we're really good at, we get pretty complacent and stuck. So this quote has meant a lot to me, that like we are supposed to get defeated. We are supposed to fail. We are supposed to feel fear. You should have seen me before this call. Sean, was there some fear going on for me? Yeah. I'm like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. Why am I doing this, right? So the purpose of life is to come up against these edges, right? So we all get called. We all get initiated. Yeah, and there's a lot of times I'd rather just be watching Netflix, right? Eating my Ben& Jerry's, right? But there's a bigger reason why we should heed the call, and this is something that comes from my study of yoga. It's called the law of Dharma. And the law of Dharma says that each one of us has a very special and unique gift. That Betsy's gift is not the same as Sean's gift, is not the same as Brenda's gift, is not the same as Pat's gift. We might all be doing the same job, but our profile, our unique thumbprint is different. And so our purpose here in life, that's one of those 4 soul questions I posed, right? What is my purpose? Well, we all have one. And when we give our purpose in service to the world, which is what Dharma is all about. It's in service. Dharma, by the way, is not necessarily a job. People, again, this could be a whole nother, maybe we'll do a Wisdom Wednesday on Dharma sometime. Dharma is not always your profession. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But Dharma is how we contribute to society, to the world, to the betterment of the world. And when we do this, when we blend our unique talent with service, the yogic texts say this is when we find our greatest happiness. This is when we find our greatest contentment. So whatever stage of life you're in, whether you're new in your career, you're midlife in career, you've retired, right? This woman that I talked to this week was like, I'm in the last quarter. She still has Dharma. She still has purpose. And Dharma, it's not static. It shifts over time. But our work is to keep watching for what our call is and then following that. That's what's really going to bring us into our deepest state of purpose and meaning in life. So the big question is, are you in the arena? And of course, I think everybody probably has heard of Brene Brown and her masterful work that she's brought into the world around shame and perfectionism and vulnerability. And she often asks this question, like, are you in the arena? And it came from a famous quote that she talks about by Teddy Roosevelt. Like, are you actually in the arena? And Brene has this great quote that she says, if you're not in the arena, also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. Which means, right, like, again, we can get caught up and I'm afraid to do this because what is so-and-so going to think? And I love that statement. If you're not also in the arena, failing, getting your ass kicked, trying new things, messing up, right? I'm not interested in your advice on how I should be doing things or how I should be living my life. So getting into that arena means that we have to choose courage. Brene also says you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you don't get them both, right? So you're going to choose comfort, plain small, doing it the way that you've always done it, you know the results, or are you going to find the courage to sort of heed the call, heed the initiation? Where is it drawing you? What does it want you to learn? So a couple things about courage. These are big ones. If you have courage, you're going to know failure. Doesn't always work out, right? You're going to mess up. You're going to piss people off. You're going to say something wrong. You're going to have to backpedal, right? Failure is a part of courage. It also requires a lot of vulnerability. And we can think about vulnerability as sort of the mix of there's uncertainty, there's risk, and there's emotional exposure. So when we're vulnerable, like I'm being vulnerable with all of you right now, there's a lot of emotional exposure. There's risk, and there's a lot of uncertainty because I have no idea how this is going to land, right? No idea. It requires vulnerability, but vulnerability is at the heart of courage, right? In fact, when Brene in her research is trying to study vulnerability, they measured people's courage. Courage is the greatest predictor of vulnerability, right? So we have to have vulnerability if we are wanting to be courageous in our life. And then last, this has been really true for me. The word courage comes from the Latin word cor, which actually means heart. So one of the earliest definitions of courage was to speak your mind by telling your heart. How many of us are willing to tell our heart? This is so hard to do. And in a moment when I talk about the heroine's journey, I'm going to go into why this is so hard, especially often for women and for men. I actually don't want to leave the men out. It's really hard for us to share our heart, to be authentic and real and vulnerable. It's so scary, but this is part of the call. So if you're going to go on the hero or the heroine's journey, and we all, not one of you hasn't received the call. Believe me, we've all received the call. What I want to delineate right now is that there is a difference between the hero and the heroine's journey. The hero's journey, so both of them, let's start with what they both are. They both are a process of individuation. They're both a process where our truth gets revealed, where we step into a more authentic version of ourself, right? We burn through something and we transform into something different. So they're both powerful in that way. And I would say, I don't know this for sure, and I have no research to back this up, but I think for most of us, we're much more familiar with the hero journey, which is what Joseph Campbell laid out. It's at the basis of all the big stories, fairy tales, Star Wars, Harry Potter. So think about for a moment when you've been in a hero's journey. So I was thinking about this for myself. I would say for me, going off to college was a hero's journey, right? I left home. I left the safety of my home. I went to a college where I knew no one. I went to a new state, a new city. I knew not one soul at this college before I went. I showed up. I had trials, I had tribulations, I had highs, I had lows, right? I came out on the other end, a transformed person. So, that was definitely hero's journey. What about for you guys? Can you see, right, that there have been hero's journeys? There have been an initiation. So hero's journey is when we go out into the world, right? There's something in the external world that we have to overcome. It could be a lawsuit. It could be a diagnosis. It could be a fight that we have about our child's education. But there's something external that we take our energy into, and we have to move through the darkness of it, and then we come out a transformed person. This is what most of us think of as the hero's journey. And again, I think most of us have been on that. The difference with the heroine's journey, the feminine version, and you men on this call, this applies to you too, because we all hold masculine energy and feminine energy. It has nothing to do with our gender. It has to do with these sort of yin-yang energies within us. The heroine's journey has nothing to do with going out into the world, right? It has everything to do with going in and down. The heroine's journey is completely about the inner journey. Hero's journey is much more about the external. But the heroine's journey is all about the inward journey. So for me, I see that there have been multiple hero's journeys in my life, but for me, the real heroine's journey happened just recently for me in these last couple years. So let me talk a little bit more about that, because clearly I'm a little passionate about it. I teach what I'm passionate about, or what I've been working on in myself personally. So with the heroine's journey, the only way out is to go in. It's all about the inward journey. And so these are some of the things that set the heroine's journey apart. It is a quest of fully embracing self. And this is not easy for anyone, right? We're so conditioned to believe in this culture that there's something wrong with us. All of our media convinces us of this, that there is something wrong with you. If you do XYZ, if you buy this product, if you take this course, right, you will fix what is wrong with you. The heroine's journey acknowledges there's nothing wrong with us. And I would say all of my teaching comes back to this core concept that we're not broken, that we are not a diagnosis. We are not even a problem to be fixed. We are actually whole, wise, pure, compassionate. We just forget it. We just get piled on with the stressors and the stories and the conditioning of life that convinces us that we're not complete in and of ourselves. So the heroine's journey is a reconnection, I have chills right now as I say this, with our essence, with our truth, which is that you're whole, you're unbroken. But we have to really embrace that. Now, the other task of the heroine, and that's why I love this picture, is that we have to heal the split between our feminine and our masculine. And this is our inner feminine and our inner masculine. So the inner feminine is the left side of the body. It's the dark, it's the moon, it's the lunar, it's the shadow, it's the night, it's the mystery, it's the intuition. We have to heal the feminine, and there is a order. We have to heal the feminine first. The feminine is also the body. If any of you have ever been in a training with me, those of you who've been in Yoga for the Mind, what do I always say? We have to start in the body. We have to start in the body. The body's where we must start. We have to heal our connection to our body first before we can even get to the mind. So this is why I think I right away in my psychology practice was like, wait a second, we're just working with the mind. I knew, my intuition knew the body has to be a part of this. And now my whole understanding of this is we start with the feminine, we start with the body. Once we have healed and reclaimed that, then we can heal the toxic masculine. We can heal how we've split. So feminine comes first, left side comes first. Then we can heal the masculine. And the end result, we just become more authentic. We become more real. We become sovereign. And what I mean by sovereignty is we get to make our own choices. We get to sort of choose how we want to be in the world. So I want to tell a little bit about, like I said, I feel like I just went on this heroine's journey, right? I'd been on multiple heroes' journeys, but not the heroines. And so I just want to briefly share my story, not in a gratuitous, I hope, fashion, but I have learned in the way that I teach that it's often through examples from my own life, because I'm so in the depths of my own personal study and my own work on myself that when I share examples from my life, people always say, you were speaking directly to me. So my heroine's journey looked like, and these are the, on this slide, these are the different phases. And I'm not going to go into any detail with it. That's what this upcoming program is about. And this is the work of Maureen Murdoch. She's the one who said to Joseph Campbell, the heroine's journey has to look different than the hero's journey because women are different, right? And I believe she was ahead of her time. I think we are at a point in the planet and our evolution as a planet that everyone needs the hero's journey. Everyone needs to go in and down and heal this split that we've all experienced because of living in patriarchy. Patriarchy's impacted and hurt men as much as it's hurt women. So we all have some inner integration work to do. So for me and for most women, in fact, all the women that have signed up for Reclaim that I've talked to are like, yep, that's my story. We separated from the feminine. What does this mean? Over the course of my life, I separated from my intuition. I hated my body, right? I wasn't listening to my inner instincts. I wasn't speaking my truth because I thought, people are going to think I'm weird if I say that, right? So I totally discounted my inner knowing, my inner instincts, my inner intuition, my inner feminine, my connection to my body, compassion for myself. I totally separated from that. And instead, I worked on developing my inner masculine, which means competition, accomplishment, achievement, perfection, structure, doing, money, achievement, right? And because I focused on the masculine, I got success, the boon of success, right? I had success in my work life. I, felt like I finished this graduate program. But then, right around the cusp of 40 for me, it was 39, I went into spiritual aridity, which is this fourth layer, where I was like, is this it? Is this my life? I remember having a 40th birthday party thinking like, well, I've arrived, but is this like, is this it? Is there more? Right? So I lived in, I think, with that spiritual aridity, that dryness for a long time. I mean, almost 6-7 years. Then pandemic hit. This stuff really started to lift up for me. And it was shortly after visiting this town out west where we were thinking about moving that I got home, and I was really in a space of confusion and doubt. And I knew that wasn't right, but I knew something had to shift. And I went to a mentor's house, like one of my dear mentors, a fellow psychologist. And she said to me, she's like, Betsy, I think we need to do a little bit of ritual and some meditation. And just being in her presence and sort of working sort of with my own pain, I had this very strong, soft energy that I felt. And it sounds a little crazy to say, but this is because I'm allowing my feminine to come out and actually speak my truth. But this energy that came in was like, Betsy, you're here in service to the divine feminine, to the goddess, right? Like, don't worry about all these other aspects of your life, and like embrace that. So I come out of this meditation like, well, what the hell does that mean, right? And I remember having a conversation with my mentor about it. And then kind of in true Betsy fashion, like I dove deep into, okay, I want to study everything on the goddess. I signed up for 3 goddess courses. I went on a goddess retreat, right? I did all this, like, I want to know about the divine feminine. I want to heal. And what it started to do for me is I did start to reclaim my inner feminine, which meant like more rest. It meant more reverence for my body, right? It meant more self-massage. It meant more trust in my intuition. It meant more compassion, really, for myself. I saw how much compassion I had for the world and for other people in my life, but I somehow couldn't apply that same compassion to myself. So this was what reclaiming my inner feminine looked like. So I'm in the process being like, yeah, it's all about the divine feminine and the goddess. And, I started to work with the goddess Kuan Yin, which is the goddess of compassion, which again really helped me tune into compassion. I got really interested in the goddess Kali, which is this goddess who's very loving, but she is not afraid to cut through like old patterning and old shit that doesn't work. And so I did a lot of meditations with Kali and was really sort of tuning into what that meant in my life. So in the heroine's journey, part of this process is called the descent down to the goddess. And what my program coming up is going to do is we're going to explore the many faces of the goddess. There are endless forms of the goddess, right? And so there were 3 sort of goddess energies that I really worked with during my descent. Your goddesses that you might work with might be completely different for me. It was Kali, it was Kuan Yin, and it was Isis were the ones that really kind of kept coming to me. So there was this descent down into the goddess, this reclamation of my own feminine, my own intuition. But then what I didn't realize is that I had to heal my masculine, right? So 9 months into my study of the feminine, I go off on a retreat for myself. Like I taught a retreat and then I went off on a retreat on my own. It was a meditation sort of shamanic energy retreat, and there were mostly men on this retreat. And I was shocked by that. I was like, whoa, it's usually women at these things. And long story short, I had to come face to face with my inner masculine, which was toxic, right? And what does that look like? What does that mean? Well, it was my rigidity. It was my tendency to be critical. It was ambition, control, perfectionism. Perfectionism is such a thing that I've had to work with in my life. It showed up loud and clear. It was competition, jealousy, rigidness. These are all those things in me that I didn't realize needed to be healed, right? So a healed masculine is not rigid and controlling. A healed masculine has structure, goes after things, speaks truth, but does so in a really open, steadfast, safe way, right? So for me, it was heal the feminine, but I had to heal my masculine. I didn't even know that my inner masculine was, so out of balance. And it's by the inner feminine and inner masculine healing, and then what's called the sacred marriage of the two, that you start to move into a space of more balance, more discernment, more clarity, more authenticity, more sovereignty. To tell you, that was a lot of vulnerability there that I just went into. So thank you for listening. Whew, as Brene Brown says, I'm going to have the vulnerability hangover tomorrow. What did I just do? What did I just share? I share in the service, I hope, of other people. So these are the steps of the heroine's journey. So this is the program I'm teaching, and I'm so excited about it just because I think it's so close to my heart and so close to what I've been through. And if I can use my life experiences and all my reading and my research and my study to be of service to other women. And of the, I think we have 33 women, which is my lucky number, by the way, signed up for this course as of the start of this webinar. I've talked to about 25 on the phone. And the message is the same. Like, I'm at a transition point. I'm looking for connection and community. I don't quite know which direction to go. I need tools. I want to step up in a new way. I just don't know how. These are sort of the messages. And the range of ages, there's like a 30-year-old, there's a 70-year-old, right? So it's women at all these stages of life saying, I need something different. We also have one man that's going to be a part of it as well. Maybe more, I hope more. So I want to just say how I think this training maybe is different than other goddess trainings. I really believe in the power of using our left brain and our right brain. So I'm as much a scientist as I'm a mystic. I have this linear, analytical, masculine left brain, but I also have this right brain that's very creative and embodied and intuitive. So every Monday night class that we have, we're going to use both, meaning we're going to start with, theory. We're going to start with information. We're going to use our intellect to kind of understand a concept of ourselves, but then we're going to take that concept and embody it. We're going to move it into an experiential exercise, which might look like meditation. It might look like hypnosis. It might look like shaking. It might look like body somatic work. It might look like writing. But I feel like this is how people learn. We don't learn by thinking about something differently. We learn because our energy changes. So the intellect is important, but if we get stuck in the intellect, it's actually kind of hard to shift. Our mind can keep us really stuck. So we're going to use the mind. Of course, I love the mind. I've spent a lot of years studying the mind, but we are going to use the mind in tandem with our unconscious, with our body, with our energy, because when the body and the energy shifts, this is when change starts to come in. This is when healing starts to come in. We're also going to work with cycles. I have become such a believer in the power of cycles. So we're using the solar cycle of seasons, right? We're starting this journey on the fall equinox. We're ending this journey on the spring equinox. So we're traveling through the darkest time of the year, which is this massive support to do this inner work. Like, I usually get really crabby and cranky in the fall. I don't like the fall. I don't feel that way this year. And I think it's because I'm aware and ready to go into the dark. Like, I'm excited to go into the dark right now because I know we're going to go on this journey with other people. We're going to work through what's holding us back, and we're going to come out in the spring transformed. As we all come out in the spring transformed, whether you do reclaim or not. This is just a little bit maybe more oomph for this season. We're going to also work with lunar cycles. So every new moon during the next 6 months, we're going to do a cacao ceremony, cacao, raw ceremonial cacao that I order from Guatemala. We're going to use that every month. You'll get a package with these 6 beautifully little packaged cacaos, samples that you mix with milk. And we're going to do ceremony each month with the new moon. New moons are the times to set intention, the times to let go of what didn't work in the last month. They're very sacred moments. And so we're going to do those together on these 6 new moons. We're going to do a lot of unconscious mind work, right? It's not scary stuff. This is powerful stuff. This is shifting stuff. This is, I find again that in my clinical practice, when I work with people on the unconscious mind through dream work, through hypnosis, through meditation, this again is when I start to see shifts happen for people. It's good for us to talk about where we're stuck, but it can keep us stuck if we're not careful. So I find that again, working at a deeper level of the unconscious shifts us more efficiently, I guess is the best way to say it. We're going to also work a lot with life force. That comes from all the yoga work, the breath work, the asana work, mudra work, which is hand positions, mantra. We're going to work with mantra. All of these things as a way to start to shift us out of old patterning that's not working. So who's it for? I mean, are you in a transition? I think we're probably all in transition. It seems like this is most of the women signing up for are saying, I'm in transition or I need something different. This is what you get. It's all on the website. Also, if you sign up today, you're going to get free entrance into my Remind program, which is sort of, I would say, my signature program. It's really where my heart is in terms of the connection between psychology and yoga. It's an 8-week program towards mental resiliency. You can do it or you can give it to a friend or a loved one. Starts mid-October on Wednesday night. So it's, you could do both Reclaim and Remind if you wanted to. All right. Questions. We're at 101. I'm 1 minute over, but I want to stick around and see if there's any questions that anyone has that I can answer for anyone. Well, there'll be an in-person option for Reclaim, so possibly Crystal. So what would be in-person is there are additions you can add on group work with me. So it'll be a group of less than 10 people, probably be more about 5 people and me. And if there's locals, we'll do it in person if people want. All of the Monday nights will be online and saved and put on a website so you can watch them anytime. In terms of the yoga, all the yoga will also be online, saved. You can watch it anytime. But I've been telling people, if you want to try to come to a live class, if you reach out to me the day before the yoga class and find out if it's full. If it's not full, you're welcome to come in person. And Emily, yes, I think men and women, so this is my opinion, so I want to say that outright. I think that because men and women, we have associated masculine energy with men, feminine energy with women, and that's a bit of a misnomer. We all carry the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, the masculine and the feminine. So there are times in our life where I think we are called to the hero's journey. We're called to this outer quest, overcoming something in the external environment. But I also think there are these moments where we're being called in. And this is the time of year where most of us are called in to really work with the inner self. And what I have noticed over and over that when we work with our inner stuff, the outer world changes. So if we shift energetically, internally, the outer world has to shift as well. So I sometimes think that working in the inner realm is easier than working in the external realm because we actually have control of our inner realm. There's a lot in the external realm that we can't control. So I think but it's fascinating to me that so many of us are actually much more scared of going in than going out. And I guess I want to really help people know that I actually don't think the journey in it has to be scary. Like I have journeyed in a lot, and what you find, you might find some skeletons in the closet. You might find some stuff you've shut down or pushed away, but you also find your genius, you find your wisdom, you find your truth, you find your well-being. So there's so much good to be found in the journey in, where sometimes I think we're fearful. It's like, oh, I don't want to go into my shadow, my unconscious. It's all going to be scary. And I'm like, no, 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 no. There's as much good and magic in the unconscious as there is stuff that we're ashamed of or embarrassed by. So I do think both men and women go on both, or can go on both the hero and heroine's journey if they heed the call. So I think that's my answer for you, Emily. Any other questions?
Betsy, there was one good one about toxic femininity. Is there a toxic?
There is absolutely a toxic femininity, and that's such a good question. Just like there's a toxic masculine, there's a toxic feminine. The toxic feminine can look like a neediness, a clinginess. The toxic feminine can go into gossip. That's a very toxic feminine quality. The toxic feminine can definitely go in jealousy and pushing the feminine away. The toxic feminine can go into over emotionality, right? So feeling emotions and letting them roll through your body is really important and healthy. But the toxic feminine can get so stuck in the emotion that they can't ever like move it through, right? So they're stuck in the sadness. They're stuck in the anxiety. They can't sort of digest it, right? So absolutely, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the program, there's as much of a toxic feminine as a toxic masculine, just like there's a divine feminine and a divine masculine. And ideally, we're clearing out what's toxic in our system, in our energy, so that we do move to a more elevated, a vertical leap, to living a more integrated. They call it the sacred marriage, which I love. I was going to talk a little bit more about today, but it'll be another time. The real coming together of the divine feminine and the divine masculine is called the sacred marriage. It has nothing to do with marriage to a partner. It has to do with the sacred internal marriage of the integration of these, the yin yang, the light dark, the night day within ourselves. Doug, I just have to say, I love that you were on this call today. Old man here, he says, a lot of feminine energy. Thanks for this class. Thanks for being here. I am so moved by you being here. And Sean is here too. So we had a couple men. Men need this. Men need I believe, Doug, that men need the heroine's journey. We all need the journey of going in, right? We all have internal work to do in terms of integrating the masculine and the feminine. All right. If you have other questions, reach out to us, info@heartlandyoga.com. Also, Sean, will you put in there, if you want to talk on the phone with me, there's a couple 15-minute time slots, I think later today and maybe on Saturday, that if you're like, I'm on the fence, or I have questions, or is this right for me? Everyone I've talked to, I'm like, I don't have any skin into whether you do this or not. I know that when programs work for people, it's because it's a good match. It's a good timing. It's a good energetic match. You resonate with what I'm teaching. You're ready for it. If it's not a good match, and that's even my therapy practice too. When my first session is always like, we got to figure out if we're a match for each other. And I feel that way about the programs that I teach too. So if you're just like, I need to bounce it off, I'm not going to try to sell you, convince you to do it, but I'll talk through with you and stay in a space as much as I can of neutrality to see if it's something that you're ready for, or the timing is right. And I had someone yesterday that I'm like, I don't think this is the right timing for you. I actually think you need something else. So I won't be afraid to tell you that if that's what's true for me. Someone asked, will there be 15-minute slots offered next week? Well, the program starts on Monday. So I wasn't going to, but maybe I will open up some on Monday morning. But if you would like to email info@heartlandyoga and just say, I'd like a 15-minute slot, none of the times work, can we find another time? We'll work with you on that. Okay. All right, everyone. Love to you. Be courageous, whatever that means in your life. And when you're courageous, you give other people permission to do the same. So, we'll see you soon.